Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Raising Confident Girls. I'm Melissa Jones, your host, and I'm so happy you're here today. And I am happy to report that I am actually in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona for two incredible events. I am at a business and girls trip event first with one of my really good friends and her sister and some amazing women. And then I'm going to be going to another event with amazing women in the room called Girlfriends in Business, Lori Harder's event. So I'm so excited about that. I love getting in rooms with women who are wanting to do good, big things in the world. And so I feel really excited to do that and to talk with them about Girls Positivity Club and what we do and what we're all about. Before we get into today's episode, it's really something that is on my mind because it's about, negative self-talk and how that can really get stuck in your daughter's minds. And before we talk about it with the girls, I think it's so common for women, whether I'm in rooms of women who have big businesses or they're moms or they're, at any stage of life, even just all types of women who are doing all types of things in the world. This can creep into our lives as well, which is that negative self-critic, especially when you're growing. And, it's all about building that positive inner dialogue and the importance of doing that for girls. And before we get too deep into that, because I think this is such a great topic for both you and for your daughter and how to do that, I just want to remind you that the biggest compliment you can possibly give is to send this to another parent or caregiver or mom of a girl who's trying to raise a confident girl, because I always want to help as much as I can. And it would just mean the world to me if you send this episode or send the show to someone that it could help, because that's really what Girls Positivity Club is about, is really empowering the girls in our lives to have these really skills while they're growing up so that they don't have to backtrack later in life. And, negative self-talk is something that just comes up for any person. It doesn't have to be a negative type of person for this to happen. It especially is common when there is an area of growth or a way that you're growing. And especially if your daughter or yourself, you're into a growth season. I feel like right now that's pretty much all I'm doing is learning and learning and learning and applying and trying new things. And, it can feel really uncomfortable and can start this spiral in your mind or your daughter's mind that's like, can I do this? Should I be doing this? And when something doesn't go the way that you expect, doubting yourself, and then that little voice inside, that critic, that inner critic voice, can speak really loudly. So it's really about helping your daughter process through that and learn the skills to work through it and to quiet that voice so that she can feel confident, feel good about, taking risk in healthy ways, and be really proud of herself for the things that she is trying instead of tearing herself down when something doesn't go well. So I want you to think about a situation where your daughter or your niece or whoever the girl in your life is, them coming home from school and maybe saying something like, I'm terrible at math, when you know that they're good at math and they're like, I'm terrible at math. I did terrible on this test. Maybe they had a big test or a big project. I'm just terrible at it. and you're like, where did this come from? You were feeling so confident this morning, or this is normally your strength area. Like, why all of a sudden are you saying these negative things about yourself? And really, I would see this a lot in the classroom. And I've mentioned this before, where when a girl is, especially if a girl has those perfectionism tendencies and she is a high achiever, it happens with other girls too, but this can come up because she's so used to being good at something that when she's actually growing and learning in a new way, in a new level, it can make her feel less than. And then that's when that little voice inside can be like, you're terrible at math. You should never try new things. You don't belong in this class. All those terrible things that we can think sometimes, or that your daughter can think that she may or may not tell you about. Um, and it's normal. Your brain is wired to protect you and to keep you safe. And so I always tell the girls, it's like that animal instinct part of your brain that's trying to protect you from something and from harm. And in your brain's view, it is not life or death necessarily to you, but it is a protection, that your brain is trying to, keep you from. So then you start thinking those negative thoughts. And the whole thing is, we don't want that to take over for our girls, so that they end up in the spiral or low self-esteem, low self-confidence about things. Another example I can think of is when girls are in a social situation. So let's say, especially if there's a larger friend group, or even in a smaller friend group, when there's a disagreement, a conflict, your daughter may feel left out, or something that happens in school, where I would see this a lot, where girls would kind of hang out with certain girls more than others, and then the other girl would feel really left out. Or they would normally, this is with the younger girls, play with someone at recess, and normally have like a girl that she would hang out with or play with, and then that girl decides to go and do something different, and then she feels isolated, left out, like she's not belonging in that group anymore, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's even at lunch, where your friend sits at a different lunch table, and then you feel like no one wants to sit with me. So she might come home and say something, or get in your car if you're, an auntie, or, grandmother, or whoever, and say something like, I don't fit in, no one likes me. So it's really sad when we hear those things, because it can be things like academics, like I mentioned. It can be social, where they're like, no one likes me, I don't want to go to school tomorrow, my stomach hurts, I just don't feel right. No one, why even go to school when people are mean to me, and things like that. Um, and even with appearance, this can turn into, and we've talked about this before with body image, where like girls look at themselves in the body, and looking at their bodies in the mirror, and they're like picking apart the little flaws that they have, especially as they're moving into puberty. Why is my body changing like this? Why does my body look like this and my friends look like something else? I know as women, we tend to do that as well. As like, you can stand in front of a mirror, and you can either start to pick apart everything about your body and think about like what's wrong with it, or you can appreciate what you do have. And I think it's really harder to do the latter, where you're like, oh yeah, my arms look really strong today, or my eyes look really bright today, or something like that. It's easier in a lot of cases to kind of look in the mirror and be that critic of even your body. So those are three different areas where I really see this coming up, is that like inner critic for girls. And the problem with this is that girls can often internalize those thoughts or those mistakes. Like if she makes a mistake with her friends, or she makes a mistake on a test, or something doesn't go like she planned, then she can internalize them and start to make them part of who she believes that she is. And that's what we don't want, right? That can be a big problem, because it can start this inner dialogue that's constantly running in her mind of all the things that are not right about her. And we want her to be able to flip that and know that she has so many good things, and that I have some strategies for you for that. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. The other problem with that inner dialogue that can be really common with girls is that it can really chip away at her self confidence. It can make her feel incapable of trying new things, trying new passions. Like, oh, well, if I'm not good at this, then I shouldn't try out for this, or I shouldn't try this because last time I was bad at this. And so it can really create that thinking of like, oh, well, I shouldn't try anything new because I won't be good at it anyway. Or I shouldn't try out for that play because I won't get the part anyway. And this one girl always gets it. So whatever that fill in the blank is another problem that this can cause for girls. And then, of course, social media and that peer pressure can amplify these feelings by that highlight reel and comparing herself to other girls, people who look like they have a perfect life on social media. And it can create that inner, people will call it like doom scrolling, or just that feeling that you feel, that ick factor of looking at other people's social media and not necessarily thinking that ick factor of like, ew, that's a terrible thing that they posted, more like, oh, they have a perfect life and my life isn't, or wow, they have a perfect body, or they have a perfect whatever. It's again that highlight perfectionism. um, how social media can amplify that for girls and make them feel like it's all real, or like everyone always is having a good time. It looks like everyone's always having a party or having a good time, and we really don't know what's happening behind the scenes with each person. So it's causing a problem for girls and their mental health, and just knowing like that's not real life. And so that's another time where girls can start to kind of get in that negative spiral. So these are all the things that, can come up, and it really is helping them navigate it and knowing that this is normal, but what we want to do is give them healthy ways of handling it so that they know what to do. Because a lot of moms I talk with, and even my own mom, she knew that the things that I was doing or saying about myself weren't always positive, and she didn't quite know how to, besides telling me like, honey, that's not true, and helping me look for evidence of why it wasn't true. um, she didn't really have a lot of different things to say. And so my intention is always to give you some little seeds that, can hopefully grow into something for you. And those strategies are those seeds. So here's the first one: naming the inner critic. This might sound so ridiculous, and maybe you've heard this before, of like naming that inner critic voice, but it's like naming them. So if you're old enough to know this, SNL, Saturday Night Live, they used to have a character called Debbie Downer, and it was like a comedy thing where it's like that person that always looks at the negative side. Everybody'd be like, "Oh, this is great," blah, blah, blah. And she'd be like, "Yeah, but did you notice this?" And it would be the most negative thing. And then they would play the music like dun dun, and then they'd zoom in on her face, and she'd always be frowning. So it's like helping them name that Debbie Downer. And I'm sorry if there's a Debbie listening, I'm sure you're wonderful, but that was, that character that they named. Or if they don't want to name it a name, they can think of like a person that they think would be really judgy if they do want to name it a certain name. But if they don't want to, they can just call it like their inner critic, or their doubter, or their hater, or whatever they want it to be, their inner fill in the blank. It can be whatever it is, because it's really that voice inside of you that stops you like, oh, wait a minute, you've never done that before. Who do you think you are? You have no business doing that. And it's, again, that way of your brain trying to protect yourself, but it's teaching her to name it and then thinking like, okay, how can I flip that voice and be like, no, Debbie, or no, whatever, I can do this. Maybe I've never done it before. Maybe I may not be perfect at it, but I'm going to try anyway, and I'm going to see how it goes. And it's really helping her recognize the times when that is coming up. Is it when you're trying something new? Is it when you're around certain people? Really having that open conversation again about, would you be open to me giving you some ideas for how you can maybe think a little bit more positive? I noticed you've been kind of down about some things. You've been saying some things like, I'm not good at acting, if she like didn't get a part in the play, or, I don't fit in. No one really likes me. I've been noticing you saying those things. which are really called limiting beliefs, which like limit them from believing the good in themselves. Um, and you can have your own way of saying it, however that would connect with your daughter. And if you're not sure, then you can just borrow the way that I'm describing it. So, naming that inner critic is the first tip. The second one is flip the script. So, flipping the script is basically turning those negative experiences into opportunities for seeing that growth mindset. So, teaching her, like, I always like to think of a lot of different visuals that the girls can relate to. So we've all seen cartoons where it's been like there's been a character who is maybe seeing the dark cloud follows them around everywhere, and we see them as being like super negative and with a dark cloud, or maybe they're sad and there's this dark cloud that's following them around everywhere. And we can think of it like, okay, there are times when you are going to have some negativity, or you feel down about something, or you're like, I don't know if I can do this. Teaching her that that's normal, but that clouds can pass. Like, clouds are temporary. You can even look at the clouds with her and be like, this cloud won't be here forever. It passes. And that's like feelings, or that's like thoughts. Your thoughts are like clouds. And you can choose to keep that like cartoon dark cloud like hovering over your mind of these negative thoughts, or you can notice the feeling, because Girls Positivity Club, we're never about ignoring feelings, or we're never about pretending like everything's perfect all the time, because that's not real and that's not helpful. But it's like, okay, I'm noticing I'm feeling really stuck about this. How can I move that cloud along? And so if she's thinking she had a big test and she's like, I'm bad at math, and you know that she's not bad at math, or even if it's not her best subject and she's like been trying really hard, you just focus on like, math feels hard right now because you're learning something new, or because you've never done this before. I always think of the girls in my classroom who would say that, like, I'm not a good writer. And it would be because it was a new genre, it was a new type of writing, it was a new technique I was trying to show them, and they were being stretched. And when you're feeling stretchy, it feels uncomfortable. Believe me, I've been stretched a lot in the last year. But you have to catch yourself and teach her to catch herself in that moment and be like, you know what? It feels hard right now, but I'm going to figure it out. Or I'm improving each time I learn. Or I don't have it yet, but I know I'll get it with time. And it's also like teaching them that instant gratification, not everything is going to come immediately, and it doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong or bad. It just means that it might take them a little bit longer. um, and I was thinking about this one parent, this mom told me one time when we were talking about her daughter and how she was working through something similar to this, where she was really starting to doubt herself. And it was really about reading, and how other people were reading bigger books than her. And she was comparing and feeling small. And her mom said, think of fruit. Think of any fruit that grows on a bush or a tree. They're not all the exact size. They're not all the exact color. They're not all ripe at the exact same moment, but you wouldn't know that when you taste the fruit, right? When you do the thing, like, you don't know how long it takes someone to master something or do something. Everybody does it in their own time, just like fruit ripens in its own time when it's growing, or however you want to think of it. Um, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that that's not a good fruit or a good, person, or you're not good at something just because it takes you a different route, or it takes you a little bit longer, or you have to figure it out a different way than other people. It doesn't make it bad. It's just different and unique to you. So that's a perspective that you can share with her, and however you think it'll connect best with her. That's called flipping the script. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the mirror test. So this is when you notice your daughter like either saying bad things about herself, like, I'm so stupid, or I'm an idiot, or tearing her body down, or just not being very nice to herself. If you notice her doing that outwardly and you can tell, um, using the mirror test. So the mirror test is how you can explain to her self-kindness and the importance of it. And I'll never forget when I've taken girls before into the bathroom and I have them look in the mirror. And this is a Mel Robbins thing. And giving herself a high five in the mirror while she makes eye contact with herself, and either saying something positive and encouraging, like you can do this, and then doing the high five to the mirror, or just looking at herself in the eyes and doing a high five. Mel Robbins has a whole book on this, like the high five habit. It's so good and it's so relevant to anyone, any age. I think it's especially important to teach girls that when you look in the mirror at yourself, just like you would never speak to a friend in a negative way, someone you love, like maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a friend, you would never look at that person and just tear them to shreds, especially like their best friend or whoever you know that they would never do that to. Use that as a comparison and say, would you ever say these things to your friend if she were having a hard time in math? Would you say, oh, you're right, you're horrible, you should just give up, you should never do this again? No, you wouldn't. You would say, it's okay, I'll help you, or we can work on it together, or encourage her, whatever you would do, or whatever you would say for her. That's what she has to do for herself. And the mirror test is like her standing in front of the mirror and being able to do that for herself, which can, as you know, if you've ever done it, and I challenge you to do that for yourself and to model that for your daughter or for the girls in your life, just standing there and looking at the reflection and saying something positive to yourself while you look at yourself. You can do it together. I think it'd be an amazing bedtime ritual, or in the morning, or whenever you think of it. It doesn't have to even be like a big thing, it can just be whenever you think of it. But just to do that. And I've even had moms who, and dads, who have written positive notes to their daughters and put it on like a post-it note on the mirror. And that's such a great visual too, to remind themselves to say those things. I know there was a time in my life where I lined my mirror with positive notes to myself because I needed that constant encouragement to keep going and that I was enough. And so, however that looks for you, just there's something about a mirror and looking at yourself and doing that that's super powerful. And then just reminding her, like, if you wouldn't say it to a best friend, don't say it to yourself. You need to be your own best friend too. And then number 4 is the garden of thoughts. So if you think of, like I mentioned earlier, like the seeds. So your thoughts are like planting seeds. So you can decide if those seeds are going to turn into weeds, which are like negative thoughts. They're going to turn into flowers, which are positive, encouraging thoughts. And that depends on what you say to yourself. So it's really helping her get into the habit of saying more positive than negative things to herself. And again, it does not mean that we're not acknowledging anything is hard. It just means instead of tearing yourself down if you make a mistake or if something doesn't go well, feeling it and then being like, okay, what can I do better next time? Or how can I improve? Or how can I get help with this? Or I don't have to be perfect. It's okay for me to mess up sometimes. I know I'm growing and I know I'm going to get better. It's all about the progress. And it's celebrating that one kind thing that you can say to yourself. It's celebrating that, you know. And maybe again, that's a ritual that you have together, is maybe at the dinner table or maybe in the car. Like, what's one kind thing you can say to yourself? What's one positive thing about yourself? And just getting her in the habit of saying those things to you and then you doing it to her or for her, like meaning you say something positive about yourself too. That way you're modeling it and you're both sharing in the same practice. And the last one, number 5, is celebrating effort over achievement. And I will always say that because, yes, of course, we want to celebrate our kids' achievements, but at the same time, we want to teach girls that it's really about the progress and the process that matters, even though it doesn't always feel good in the moment. It's noticing, like, hey, I actually figured that out today. I didn't know that yesterday. I'm making steps toward this. Or yes, I had a setback today, but I know I can do more tomorrow, or I can try something different that didn't work. Like, at least I know what didn't work. Now I'm going to try something different. So it's about helping her and really having those conversations with her and modeling that for her, of how can I celebrate that progress? And especially when you, as her parent or caregiver, can recognize the progress that she's making and point it out to her, it really helps when someone else says that. Even today in this business group that I'm in, and it's a girls, retreat too, where we are helping each other. I had someone say to me today, you have been working so hard on this nonprofit, Girls Positivity Club, and you have not let up. Like, I know you're in a lot of uncomfortable growth because you're learning new things all the time. You're figuring out new ways to help the girls all the time, and the parents and the families. You've not stopped. And I'm so proud of you for that. And it just felt so good to be recognized by one of my friends because she's seen me through the whole journey of everything. And even though I know she loves me as a friend, it just felt so good to hear someone acknowledge that. And it was unexpected. So, whether expected or not, it doesn't matter. I think that the more we can build our girls up and each other as women, as people, as humans, the more that we can point out someone's effort and progress, the better they're going to feel. And the more they're going to feel like, I can do this. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going no matter what it is. And really, the big part about this, of the positive outcomes that this is going to have for your daughter, it's going to build her confidence. It's going to help her have stronger relationships with friends because and with family, she's going to start doing that for them too. And it's also going to show her how to cheer other people on and herself. She's going to have that long-term growth because she's going to learn as her age now, moving forward, how to do this for herself and others. And that's only going to help her grow and have that long-term just skill in that area of like, how do I move myself through this when this is happening, no matter what stage of life I'm in. And it's going to also give her that emotional resilience to work through setbacks, to work through when things are hard, and to celebrate herself no matter what the outcome, and to know that she doesn't have to be perfect. And it'll help her from getting into that spiral of negativity. We call it in Girls Positivity Club that tornado of negativity. She'll be able to help herself get out of it quicker. And that's really what it's about, is her managing this and having more of a positive mindset about herself, and knowing that she can work through it, and she can also ask for help. And she has a positive community cheering her on, whether it's her friends, her family, if she's in one of our clubs, no matter what it is, that she's not alone, and that she can be more in control of her inner dialogue and think more positively about herself. And these are a few tips that can help bridge that gap for her, and feeling more positive about herself, and really quieting down that negative voice. So I hope this was helpful. Please let me know what you think, and I would love to hear from you at Girls Positivity Club across all social media. And if you have other topics, I love hearing from you. And again, if you would share this with another parent or caregiver that it could help, I really, really would appreciate it, because the whole goal is to get this message and these strategies and this conversation going to as many families of girls and people who want to impact girls in positive ways as possible. So thank you so much for listening. And until next time, keep raising those confident girls. Keep showing them the way. You can do this. I'm behind you, and I'm here if you need anything. Thanks. See you next week. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.